I didn't get into this to make spreadsheets. I got into this to make art.
Are you listening?
I met a girl in Oakland, but I don't say her name.
I remember using ZBrush back in the day.
So what got you into digital sculpting?
So I'm hoping that when all this is said and done, I end up being considered like an OG. I was there pretty much when ZBrush first came out. So when ZBrush came out, I was in college. It was still early in my college career. And up until that point, I was actually struggling with 3D a little bit. I had a lot of hard time UV unwrapping. I had a hard time box modeling. I had a really hard time grasping the fundamentals because it really wasn't like anything I'd experienced before. Clay, you move around with your hands. You make a drawing with your hands and the pencil. Clicking buttons with the mouse and trying to extrude things from boxes was a difficult thing for me. I also struggled in math, and I wonder if that had something to do with how I perceived spatial awareness and geometry. I think about that now. When ZBrush came out, though, it was something that you could do organically. It was something that you did on your Wacom tablet, like you were digital painting in Photoshop. It felt natural. You were doing drawing marks, but you were pulling out 3D form. It was honestly pretty mesmerizing. I remember it touching me in a way that only a few other things in my path as an artist have touched me, specifically VR. VR in 1993 or 4 as a kid at the fair. I feel that impacted me in a way that kept me from wanting to just be a 2D artist, even though when I got to college I wanted to be a concept artist. Then ZBrush came out, and it really made it clear to me that my path was not going to be in 2D, and it was not going to be in concept art. It was going to be building characters in 3D, using ZBrush and using it like clay. So digital sculpting is one of those things where when it first came out, or when it first came out in that mainstream way, I immediately stopped whatever it was I was doing and I learned that program. That gets us kind of where we are today with Medium. VR is something that has been on the rise for a while and is becoming more and more mainstream. And after about 3 sessions with this program, I get the same feeling that I had when I first started learning ZBrush and really started getting it deeply into sculpting and sculpting in 3D. I feel very strongly that a program like Medium, potentially even ZBrush one day, is going to revolutionize how we do art in our day-to-day. I feel that learning this program now and trying to do things that look good is going to help build me a foundation for my future. Hey, what's good everyone? It's Zoro ZBrush, JoeSolo, and today we're going to be going through a little bit of Adobe Medium. Let's go ahead and get started. You can see here I have my 2 controllers in each hand. We have a trigger on each controller and 2 side orange buttons. Those are called grabbers. Your right hand is typically the working hand. It's going to be the one that you put clay down with and smooth and move and all those things. Your left hand is typically going to be all of your menus, options, brush options, scene, outliner, things of that nature. Let's go ahead and get started with some of the basic menus. So you can see my thumb is going over this button here with the highlighted in orange. We're gonna go ahead and press it. You'll see a little menu pops up. It's got your basic file, capture, share, notifications, all kinds of different things. The tutorial in here I think is actually pretty handy. They play 6 like 1 or 2 minute tutorials that will give you a decent rundown of Medium. If you go to file, you can make a new scene. You can save your scene, load, bring in a mesh, add a sculpt. You can go ahead and capture from Medium as well, taking pictures. There's user preferences. You can go ahead and change your hand to left-handed if you're left-handed. You can toggle the avatar hands or not. I'm gonna go ahead and keep them on. You can do tooltips, and you can turn on and off first-time user. Go ahead and, mess with the settings as you see fit. We're gonna go ahead and just start a new scene. When you want to do anything, go ahead and point your pointer at it and just hit the trigger button. Boom. So we're in a new scene. Not much has changed. This scene I know looks blank. A lot of you are used to 3D programs with an outliner and other menus. If you move your left thumb over to the left thumbstick and press down, you will see an outliner menu that pops up, a little scene graph. You'll see the middle X coordinate in front of us. You'll see what's called a lathe. You'll see a camera, and you'll see a light. The camera and the light are both selectable. Again, just point and click with your trigger button. And if you want to go ahead and grab the camera, you can grab it and move it and position it to an angle that might help you while you're sculpting. You can go into settings. We can adjust the camera's FOV. So let's set it at say 135. We can change its visibility in the scene outliner and in our scene. You can see it disappear. It doesn't really matter because when we remove this scene, you won't see the camera anyway. You can turn the scene graph on and off. Now, right now you'll see we can't really see too much through the camera. We'll press down again to get rid of the menu. And we'll go ahead and bring up our menu from the button here with the little orange button. Capture. We'll capture a photo. Now, if we select this to use the camera node in the scene and hit down to bring up the camera, you'll see as we move the camera around, change this to 15. Let's go ahead and hit the little orange menu button here to bring up our file capture share menu, and we're going to go ahead and capture a photo. That brings up a little photo icon here. Now there's some options. You can attach it to your hand right here and see through it. You can attach it to your helmet so we can see through it, or we can attach it to the camera node that we have placed in the world. So if we go ahead and press down to bring our menu up, down on the thumbstick, we can see our camera here, and we can place this image or place this camera anywhere to get a nice image, different view. I'm not sure. Whatever it is you might want to do with it. And then we can take a photo to save if we want. Now, let's move on. You can also select the light, and you can move it around. I'm going to make an object real fast. Now, if I make an object, I can take this light and I can move it around, get it closer or further. get a lighting condition that I'm comfortable working with. Pretty cool, right? Anything you select here is going to have its own settings, so we can make it a point light or a spotlight. We can turn the shadows on or off. We can adjust the cone width. We can adjust the brightness, and we can adjust the color. Close settings, moves it down. There's a manipulation menu here. If you select these, you'll see little manipulators that you can use if you don't want to, grab manually. The next thing I'd like to go over is renaming your sculpting layers here in the scene graph. So I'm going to go ahead and press down on the left thumbstick to get rid of that menu. I'm going to press up on the thumbstick to bring up this little radial menu, and I'm going to select my clay brush. You'll see a little ball over here on the working hand. I'm going to go ahead and pull my little trigger there until I get a nice ball. Now this ball is on layer 1 currently. I found that renaming this layer sometimes can cause some funny business, at least in the beginning. So I'm going to add another sculpting layer here by clicking add sculpt layer. And you'll see we have layer 2. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this menu by pressing down. I'm going to add a little bit more clay with my little working hand. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer. You can see that's been renamed Working Layer 2. Now I should be able to rename this as well. Voila, so we have Working Layer 1 and Working Layer 2. Both of these layers you can turn on or off. Both of them you can manipulate individually. We'll grab Working Layer 1. Each have manipulation settings, so I can go ahead and move this one in here if I'd like. I can rotate it. I can scale it. Pretty cool, right? Now, let's go ahead and run through getting started making something. I don't think we're going to make anything today. I'm just going to get you familiar with making something. So Medium is a lot like using traditional clay in the sense that you're going to be adding lumps of clay as opposed to doing what you do in ZBrush, which is subdividing and sculpting up forms. This is a much more almost Boolean approach in some ways, as I've heard it described. Now we're going to hit up on the left thumbstick, just hold it up, and you can see we get this little radio palette. You have a clay brush, a move brush, a swirl brush, a flatten brush, a cut brush, an inflate brush, a smooth brush, and a paint brush. Most things start with the clay brush. So with that selected, we can either go ahead and shortcut making a new layer here. We can turn on symmetry, delay, grid snap, or angle snap. We're just going to concentrate on new layer and mirrors. So we're going to make a new layer, make sure mirror is on. Now you'll see my thumb over here is over this green button with the sprocket. That is going to be your menu options. Above that, you'll see is a little color button. I'm going to select that first, and I'm going to give us like a neutral gray or a darker gray material. After you moved it, you can select it by just pointing over the little arrow with your trigger finger pressed down. You can move that little arrow thing down to where you want it, let it go. We'll go with the trigger and just hit the color button for the menu to go away. In the settings for the brush itself, there's a few things you can do. You can change the shape of your starting brush. So go ahead and hit the trigger button over the shape, hit the settings button to make it go away, and we can start with a box if we want to. Or we could start with a little pill. Or there's all kinds of little shapes in here. Stamps. Look at this, we got some drapes. Pretty cool, right? Now we also have the option, instead of using this like a spray tool that's all crazy, we can go ahead and do single strokes. That'll just place the object. Pretty cool, right? Now we can also undo all this. So if you hit left on the thumbstick, it will undo. You have 64 undos total. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start with a sphere, do a single stroke. For its stroke taper, I'm going to put none. And then I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to use my little trigger button to place a sphere. Now, if you wanted to make this sphere bigger right out the gate, there's a couple things you can do. Either A, you can hit both of these orange buttons and pull, or push, which scales the object. It's pretty cool, right? Or we could have chosen to start bigger by scaling the brush ourselves to start with. So on the right thumbstick, if you press up or down, you can increase the size of your brush. Now, if you hold left or right, it'll turn orange, and if you pull or push, it'll dynamically scale your brush, which I think is pretty cool. So if we want to start with a ball that big, we would dynamically scale it, then hit the trigger button, then let go, hit the trigger button, and boom. Now, if we wanted these objects to be more centered, we just have them hover over each other. You can grab with either hand, doesn't matter if it's left or right. If you grab with both though, it's going to scale. Pretty cool, right? Now, as I mentioned before, you have some other brushes here. You have the move brush, which works as you think it does. We can go ahead and move the object, or move parts of the object. Start making kind of a crazy head here. Kind of cool, right? We can scale our brush up or down and push these things in and pull them out. And this is voxels, so the mesh is automatically, the mesh topology is always adjusting for it to work as best as it can. Maybe we got like a little skull thing going here, right? Pretty cool. Now, if you go ahead and bring up your scene graph, and you select your object here, so we're on working layer 1, right? Yep. You select the object, and you go, instead of settings, you go into actions. You can increase or decrease the resolution of the object. So say when you're moving things around, you don't feel that you have the resolution that you want, or maybe you feel you have too much resolution, you can go in here and decrease it. See, we got a little bit less resolution. Undo that. Or you can decrease it, or you can increase it, giving you more topology, as you can see. Pretty cool, right? Now, I talked about this being a lot more like traditional clay than anything. These brushes can work a little bit harshly. So a lot of times what you want to do is you want to build up multiple forms and merge them together. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So I'm just going to move a couple things here. Cool. So say I want to carve out just a dent in this nose, and I'm not getting what I want from the move. What I can do is I can add a new sculpting layer. I'll rename it subtract. And I'll add a sphere object to it. I'm going to make sure that I have clay selected. And I'm gonna make sure that it's a single stroke, set to stroke taper to none. Oh, you know what? We'll do a pill. That's good. We'll scale it down. And I'm gonna put the pill right here. I'm gonna put two right. I'm gonna put one or two right there. So we have our pills. We can select our working layer first, our subtract layer second, and subtract, and boom. We subtracted. Now, say you want to do something different. Say you want to add horns. You're going to go ahead and make a new sculpting layer. Call it horns. Go back to our clay brush. We'll start with a pill shape. We'll add those in. Now you'll see if we go and manipulate these are not connected to the mesh at all. But we're about to change everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the working order in the horns. We're going to go to actions. We're going to go to merge. So now if we go to our move tool, we'll see this is all one object. And I can go ahead and move these around and edit them with the rest of the mesh. Now say you've kind of pulled something out and you do want to smooth it down. If you hold your left trigger button, that maps a second brush. It's usually the smooth tool. So the smooth tool, as you can see, is highlighted. You'll know that because the little pink arrow is on it. And I can hit my right trigger button and just smooth that area down. I can also increase and decrease the size of the smooth. If I press the settings, I've got some strength settings here, size, whether you want to flatten, average, or fill. You might want to constrain it to a straight line. There's all kinds of options. Now let's say you want to go ahead and sculpt by actually building up the form that's there. We can do that too. So if we open up our clay, we go into menu, we can make our stroke a continuous stroke, and we can choose different stroke types. I'm going to go ahead and go with thickness, and we can make sure that it actually sticks to the surface. If nothing is pressed on here, it won't stick to anything. It'll just create a shape in the air. So we're going to make sure it's on surface, and we're going to go into our primitives here, and I'm going to select this flat circle brush. And again, I have thickness selected because I can taper my stroke by scaling the shape thickness as I squeeze the trigger. So you'll see how that plays out. I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's called horns now, but my working layer selected. I'm going to increase the resolution a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take my brush and squeezing lightly, I'm going to start building up some forms. They're looking a little bit lumpy. I'll smooth them down, and again, I can adjust the strength of the smooth. Maybe bring that down to like 34. And as you can see, I can start building up forms the way I would in ZBrush. Now, I still think there's not enough geometry here, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the resolution a little bit. And now I can also start going in and grabbing my move tool and moving this stuff around. Now at this point, I'd probably want to lower the resolution to keep working with it, but that's okay. Now say I want to go in and start adding another structure here on the side. I wouldn't typically sculpt that out in this program, as I've actually seen from other tutorials as well. The best course of action would be to go ahead and make a new layer. Grab your clay tool. Grab a shape like a sphere. sure it's set to single. Make sure service is turned off. No taper of any kind. And let's go ahead and add that shape right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move that shape to the place where I want it to be. So maybe it's a skull and you're trying to add on the bottom part of the teeth here. You go ahead and move your shape into place. And when you're satisfied, you either keep it there on its own layer so you can manipulate it on its own. You can lock it so it can't be touched, whatever you want. Or you can go ahead and select both your layers and merge them. Now when you hit that with smooth, it'll start blending in. Bam. You've got one shape. Now we'll go in. It's much easier to manipulate your shape that way. I'm going to go ahead and smooth a bunch of this down, since lumpy shapes are gross. And you can see we haven't really made anything, but let's go through some more of the tools. The last one I think we'll talk about, at least for now, is probably the flatten brush. And that's mainly because I haven't really gotten the greatest results from any of the other brushes. We'll talk about inflate a little bit. It's mainly the swirl brush I haven't found a good use for. So the flatten brush is pretty awesome. Gives you this big flat wheel thing. And all you do is go ahead while holding your trigger button and start flattening stuff down. It's pretty cool, right? Just now it's going to uniformly flatten things, as you can see. So it's kind of hard to use, at least with its default settings that I have here. Maybe if I put it to surface. Oh, look. We can start punching in forms. This is pretty dope, actually. Nice. So if we change the hardness, we get some cool results. This can probably be handy for a hard surface or all kinds of different things. Mainly, you know, it's just another tool to help you sculpt a little bit better. The last one we're going to go over is inflate. Now, if you have enough geometry, it should inflate relatively okay. But you'll notice it inflates and kind of smooths. So you just need to get used to what it's going to do for it to service you properly. Now, if you want to work subtractively, like you would in ZBrush, just double click as fast as you can this little green sprocket thing. You'll see it turn red. And now we can start digging into the mesh. This is the same with the clay brush or any other brush. If you want to use the alt or reverse of it, just double click the spring button. Now it's back on green. Now we can start pulling forms back out. And then if we need to, we can smooth them down. Pretty cool, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and open up a scene I started here. And the reason I'm bringing this scene up is so we can go over bringing in reference and you know, kind of working with the custom scene itself. So I started this pig sculpt here. You can see that in my scene settings, I've gotten rid of the grid and I'm just sort of sitting in darkness. My light is a little bit too close, but it's kind of going for, closer to that Rembrandt shadow. You can also see in here, in my outliner, these things I'll select, that I have the nose and the head still separated out, the ears still separated out, and the chest still separated out from this piece. Now I've just started this, and I'm keeping these elements separate so I can shape them easily. You can see all these images that I brought in came in as their own layer. I'm going to go ahead and bring one in right now. You select down on the thumbstick and go to add image. You can choose to add an image. You can choose to add it from your computer or wherever. So right now I already have a folder set up. It's called ref. I'm going to go ahead and select image 002, add, and that's going to bring it on its own layer. So rename this example pic, enter, and what's cool is I can move this image, I can scale this image, and I can place this image wherever I want to. Above me, behind me, if I want to spin in my chair, over here to the side, maybe I want to have it really close up, and I can have the rest of my ref, oops, completely surround me. So I can now be surrounded by my subject matter as I work. Pretty dope, right? So I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to Medium. I've hoped you've learned a few things, and if you have any questions for a follow-up video, please leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. I'm going to try and share more of my journey into Medium with you guys. Maybe do a video where we actually make some stuff. Maybe I just start this pig over and we, go through that process. We'll see what's going on, but we're gonna be working with ZBrush still. We're gonna be working with Medium. We're gonna be kicking out videos. So go ahead, stay tuned, smash the likes. This is ZoroZBrush, JoeSolo. Peace.